All right, folks, here's the deal. Last week, I lost my job due to a reduction in force. With that went the laptop, which I use to record and edit all my episodes. In other words, I am currently out of podcasting commission. However, I do have an ancient PC that I can use to edit. I'm just not able to do much in the way of recording for the time being until it is, that I get something new, which I am working on. Speaking of which, let me just say real quick that if anyone has any PC or laptop recommendations, drop me a line, stevenorelse@gmail.com. Anyway, there will be no new episodes of the Superman Super Show, Hither Came Conan, another G.I. Joe podcast, and the Comic Book Super Show in March. But here's the thing, I'm not going to leave you with nothing. See, I had a bit of inspiration while editing together the random audio crap episodes of Just Another Fanboy, and I've decided to reboot Steeven Orr Else one last time. Seriously, one last time, I promise. And I'm going to release new episodes that are entirely made up of audio that I have recorded over the last 20 years, focusing on those bits of audio that may not have been released before. But the one rule I have to follow here is that I can't record anything new for these episodes. And at least not for now. We'll see once I get something new to record with. But yeah, that's what you're getting today. The first of these new episodes from Steeven Orr Else, which is entitled Fantastic Four number 232 and the Adventures of Forager. Enjoy! The following podcast is made up of various scraps of recycled audio recorded randomly over the last 20 years. Nothing within this episode should be considered current or up to date. Listener discretion is advised.
You know who you are? Steeven is my name. Even Steeven.
Will you say something, Steeven?
Steeven Orr Else Media.
When's our party? I thought you hated parties.
I like parties. It's balloons I don't like.
Right.
You don't like balloons.
Oh, don't talk to me about balloons.
Why?
Balloons explode, Jen. They explode suddenly and unexpectedly. They are filled with the capacity to give me a little fright, and I find that unbearable.
From a secret location deep within the hills of eastern Kansas, one man, armed only with a microphone, his voice, and an unnatural gift for hyperbole, brings you the most important podcast in all of human history. It's time to escape from the mundane, ladies and gentlemen. This is Steeven Orr Else. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the all-new Steeven Orr Else, the podcast that simply doesn't know the definition of the word reboot, which, might be part of the problem. I'm your host, my name is Steeven, and I salute you, each and every one, because you, my friend, are a lover of fine things, and your taste in podcasts only proves it. You've done the research, you've scoured the podcasting horizon in search of quality shows, you've read the reviews, you've weighed the pros and the cons, and in the end, you have chosen the one show that you know deep down in your heart of hearts will be the show that shines above the rest and will forever change the way you look at the world. But then you ignored all that and picked this show instead.
Salute!
Now, before we really dive into the meat of the show, some of you may be feeling a bit of an odd sensation as you're listening to this episode. I mean, you're there on your stationary bike or in your car or sitting at your desk or wrestling gators or doing whatever it is you do when you listen to these types of shows, and then suddenly you feel your skin begin to crawl as a sense of deja vu slowly washes over you. And you know what? That's okay, because here's the thing. You are not going crazy. There's a reason for that deja vu-y tingle you're experiencing, and believe you me, it's a pretty darn good one. I just don't want to get into all of it right now because, if you want me to be honest, it's all a bit dull, and Being a bit dull is not at all what we're about here on Steeven Orr Else. Instead, I want you to relax, let go, and give yourself over to what you are about to experience, because you're in for something special here, folks. The good people at Steeven Orr Else have been working around the clock to create for you a little bit of magic here today. So let it in, people. Let it in. Just, keep an eye on them gators. Years ago, John Byrne began his fabled run on the Fantastic Four. His first issue was number 232 from July of 1981, and it gave rise to 5 years. 5 years of great Fantastic Four stories. Not every tale was gold. I mean, they're not gonna be, but the impact that his book had, his run, this book, the run of books, the giant frickin' 5-year run that he had on this book, it's still being felt today. Actually, I can't really say that for certain. I haven't actually read a Fantastic Four book in like a decade. But still, anyway, I'm here to talk about the first step of this monumental run, issue number 232, which is entitled Back to the Basics. Of course, John Byrne was credited as words and pictures. There's a guy here listed at under inks as Bjorn Hain, Heyn. You know what? That is an anagram of John Byrne. So he also did the inks. Jim Novak was on letters, Glennis Ween on colors, Jim Salicrup was the editor, and Joe Shooter was the editor-in-chief. In this issue, the evil alchemist Diablo, he's been living life on the down low for a few months. He's currently residing in a boarding house, and as the issue opens, he's doing his evil things with his evil potions, and he's hatching an evil plot of revenge against the Fantastic Four. He's really into some first-class soliloquizing here. Soliloquizing, is that the right word? He is just freaking talking to himself out loud in the way that villains do. So the reader understands what's going on. Anyway, he's interrupted by Mrs. Mulligan. She's a nice old lady who's actually not nice at all. I was trying to be positive, but no, she's the landlady, and she comes banging on his door to make sure he ain't cooking nothing. After all, those smoky potions he's got going on, they gotta be filling the house with quite the stink. Well, Diablo assumes the identity of a sweet-looking old man and assures Mrs. Mulligan that he's not cooking. She leaves, and he immediately gets back to it and unleashes something to crush the Fantastic Four. What that something is, we don't quite know yet, but we're soon to find out. We cut to the Casa Tendolini hair salon where Sue Richards, or the Invisible Woman, she's getting herself a new do. Everything seems to be peachy keen when suddenly the salon is attacked by some sort of dirt monster. She tries to go invisible to take it on, but it quickly encases her in dirt, allowing it to see her. Meanwhile, Ben Grimm, the Thing, and his lady friend, do you think anybody ever just calls him the Thing? What's up, Thing? I doubt it. Anyway, he and his lady friend, Alicia Masters, they're leaving a Broadway performance of The Elephant Man. Ben has been moved to tears by the show. He is bawling like a giant rock baby. It begins to rain, and it doesn't take long for Ben to realize that it's only raining on him. But before he can even think about how freaking weird that is, he is suddenly surrounded in a bubble of water. He tries to break free so that he doesn't drown, but he's not having any luck at all. In Central Park, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, he meets up with Frankie Ray. Apparently, the two used to be a thing. Not a thing, but a thing. But anyway, she had a real problem with him using his powers, which, you know what? If you're going to date the Human Torch, get past that. Either don't date the man or get past it. They try to talk it out when Johnny is suddenly attacked by a creature made of air. Are you starting to see the pattern here? Okay, Invisible Woman, dirt monster, the Thing, water monster, and now Johnny, a air monster. In case you don't see the pattern, here's one more for you. In the Baxter Building, the headquarters of the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards, or Mr. Fantastic, he's doing science, as he is known to do. He's in his lab, he's doing science, and he's attacked by a creature made of fire. That's right. If you guessed that the Fantastic Four are being attacked by the band Earth, Wind, and Fire, you'd be wrong. Anyway, Reed escapes the fire creature by turning himself into a ball and bouncing the heck out of there. Once outside, he stretches out like a sail and he glides on over to Central Park where, lo and behold, he runs into Frankie Ray. She tells Reed that Johnny has been attacked by a wild thing and needs help. Not to be confused by the song. There seems to be a lot of song musical references in here. We've got Earth, Wind, and Fire, and now Wild Thing. And I don't think it's making Johnny's heart sing. Anyway, Reed quickly tracks him down and tries to smother the wind creature when fire arrives, and Reed's giant brain deduces that they might fare better were they to switch opponents. And so they do just that. And like that, just like that, they do it, tag team style. Back at the hair salon, Sue uses her invisible force field to burst out of her dirt prison and then make her escape out into the city, where she searches for the rest of the team. It's here where Byrne begins introducing new elements to the Fantastic Four mythos by having the Invisible Woman use her force field to lift her up and propel her down the street. Meanwhile, still surrounded by water and almost out of breath, Ben is still able to remain mobile, and he smashes into a sporting goods store where he is given a scuba tank by a friendly customer. Water doesn't like this and tries to drown the customer instead, and so Ben, having no real choice in the matter, hands the scuba tank over to save her life, leaving himself open once again for a drowning. But as water jumps at Ben, the creature is repelled away by one of Sue's force fields, who has shown up just in the nick of time. She then traps water in an invisible force bubble while Ben goes on out to take care of the dirt monster, or, as we're calling it, Earth. Reed arrives and he does what he does best. He does science! He has Sue free the water creature and instead capture the air creature in her bubble. Reed then grabs a pair of jumper cables that are just lying around on the ground and destroys the water using electricity. Science! Then he tells Ben to open a water main and use the water to turn the dirt monster into mud, destroying another foe. Science! Then at last, he has Sue increase the pressure within her force bubble, which forces the air creature, who is a gas form, into a liquid form, which then destroys it. Science! But what about Johnny and the fire creature? Fear not, true believers! High above the city, Johnny unleashes his Nova Flame, which consumes all of the oxygen around them, thus causing the fire creature to extinguish. And, like the others, the creature is destroyed. Science! Back at the Baxter building, Reed explains to Ben and Sue that the creatures that they fought were elementals, and besides Dr. Doom, who would never resort to such crude methods, the only other foe of theirs that would use alchemy against them is Diablo. But how can that be? Ben points out that Diablo died when they last fought, and of course Reed explains that they never saw a body, man. This is comics. You don't see a body, there's no death. He also explains that Diablo has escaped certain death before, and so it has to be him. It just has to be. But Reed's a science dude, and he has nothing he can use to trace mystical energies, so he makes a call. Later that night, as Diablo tries to skip town, he is confronted by the Fantastic Four, who have enlisted the help of Doctor Strange to track him down. So the Fantastic Four take their foe away in the Fantastic Car, leaving Doctor Strange alone in a dark alley. I don't know. I'm sure Doctor Strange has a way to get home, but still, that seemed kind of weird. But there you have it, the debut issue of John Byrne's Fantastic Four, and nary an egg in sight. Most of what I read nowadays are old books. Not because I'm a crusty old man who's stuck in his ways and who thinks that the books these days aren't near as good as they used to be. Here, the books these days, these kids read. That's not the way I am. No. For me, it all comes down to money. I can't afford a monthly comics habit, so instead, I have two things: a monthly subscription to Comixology Unlimited and a library card. With that, it's just easier to read the old stuff. There's some fairly new stuff out there, and I do read the occasional Image book, but just trying to get back into Marvel and DC these days just feels darn near impossible. But The point I'm trying to make is that because I'm reading these old books, I like to take circumstances like John Byrne's Fantastic Four issue and try to imagine how that would be done today. When a writer is put on a new book, they typically have the first 6 to 12 months mapped out. Of course, I'm just assuming based on articles and such that I read, I'm not sure that every writer does that. But I feel like at the very least, most writers go into a title knowing the big story they want to tell. And many probably have an ending in mind. How they then go about telling that big story can differ. But for many, they are at the very least planting a lot of seeds right in that first issue, if not just jumping right into the big story right away. With this Fantastic Four tale, you got it done in one. It feels to me, more like Byrne just flexing his muscles. The next few issues are done in ones as well. And again, this is just conjecture, but to me, this is Byrne just easing into things. He's trying on the pants and he's walking around the store. He's pulling the egg carton from the cooler and he's inspecting each egg to ensure that none of them are cracked. Now, don't get me wrong. There's something very exciting about reading the first issue to a new writer's run and knowing once you hit the end that you are in for some pretty epic stuff. But at the same time, every story can't be epic and life-changing. I mean, after a while, it gets a bit boring, right? And really, the only thing out there that can excite my fanboy mind are the small stories or the one-offs, like number 232 of Fantastic Four. Was it the best issue I've ever read? No, far from it. But it was fun, and in the end, that's all I need. Steeven Orr Else will return after these messages.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh me, oh my. Whatever am I gonna do now?
Well, what's wrong there, friend?
Well, it's my comic books. I have so many of them, and they aren't worth a dime.
Well, that ain't nothing to fret over. One called a CVT will solve your problem.
CVT? What is that?
Not what, friend. Who? CVT is the Comics Value Team.
The Comics Value Team?
Well, that's right, friend. For just a small monthly fee, CVT will not only tell you the value of your comics, well, they're going to make your comics valuable.
But how can they do that? The man at the comic book store said that my collection was worthless.
Well, that's simple, friend. After cataloging your collection, CVT's value enhancement experts will seek out other copies of the same issues you own and eliminate them, making your collection all the more valuable.
Eliminate them? But how?
Space-age technology, friend, that's how. Why, with their patent-pending fleet of mobile incineration units, comic book stores will be lining up to buy your collection.
Hey, now that's neat.
Which sure is, friend.
Thanks for the advice, stranger. I'm gonna call CVT right now.
The Comics Value Team, turning your average comic book collection into a potential gold mine. The methods used by the Comics Value Team are not considered legal in all of the 50 United States, except for maybe some areas of Florida and Texas.
And now, back to Steeven Orr Else. Speaking of bacon, I get up this morning to go to work. It's Sunday morning around 10:35 in the a.m. It's September the 23rd. So I get up this morning to go to work, and I step out onto the porch, and the smell of bacon is just in the air. And we happen to live maybe a block away. It's just down the road from us is the downtown district of our town. But our town is freaking small. So really our downtown district is a block, and it consists of 3 storefronts on one side of the road across from the park. But one of those storefronts is a little diner, and they basically do breakfast and lunch, and that's it. And so this morning I wake up to the smell of them frying their bacon. And what a wonderful smell it was. There's nothing like waking up to the smell of bacon. But what makes it not good is, as good as it is to wake up to the smell of bacon, the reason why that's such a good smell is because typically that means you're getting bacon. But there was no bacon for me to have this morning. And so that made me a little sad, even though it smelled like heaven itself. I do love me some bacon. we had a period of time where we stopped eating regular bacon and had just turkey bacon. And turkey bacon's a good substitute. You get used to it really quick. And after you've eaten the turkey bacon for a few, couple of weeks, it's not like we're just eating bacon all the freaking time. But, every once in a while, I like to throw a little scrambled eggs together. And I make some pretty good scrambled eggs. And you can't have scrambled eggs without bacon unless you have sausage. But we do prefer the bacon. So we switched over to the turkey bacon. And like I said, after a few times, that's just your body just decides, well, this is what bacon tastes like. And it is a healthier option. And frankly, if you're going to switch over to the turkey bacon, I would suggest never, ever, ever trying regular bacon again after that. Because your body does tell you after a while, this is what bacon tastes like. This is... There's no difference between turkey bacon and regular bacon. They both taste the same. You were a fool for eating regular bacon low those many years when you could have had this healthy alternative. But then you make the mistake, like I did, and you have regular bacon. And your body's like, what the frick? What? You've been eating turkey bacon this whole time and you could have had this? You freaking idiot. And turkey bacon just doesn't cut it anymore. So that's my one piece of advice for you. If you love bacon and you want a healthy alternative, go to turkey bacon. But never, ever, ever, ever switch back. Never taste regular bacon again. If you're in a restaurant and somebody says, would you like some bacon with your scrambled eggs? You ask, do you have turkey bacon? They say no. Then you say, no, thank you. Get thee hence from me, real bacon, because you are like heaven in my tummy and yet hell in my heart. You know what I'm saying? Wow, I could do a whole episode about bacon. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Actually, no, because I'm done with the bacon. That's all I'm going to talk about.
Welcome once again to the annual Binge Watching Championship. I'm Chuck Bland, and joining me this afternoon is my colleague and all-around swell guy, Tom Stale.
Thanks, Chuck. It's always a pleasure. And what a beautiful day it is for binging some TV.
It certainly is, Tom. The sun is shining, there's a cool breeze blowing gently from the east, and the birds are singing their singy songs. Thankfully, we're inside and don't have to put up with all that.
Too true, Chuck. Too true. Nothing like a bit of sunshine to put a damper on some truly epic TV binging.
And speaking of epic binging, Tom, we have a real treat for everyone today.
That's right, Chuck. Today, to binge Iron Fist Season 2 on Netflix, hailing from the hills of eastern Kansas, we have returning champ, Steeven Orr.
This is truly a historical event, Tom, as this will be the first time that Orr has binged a television show professionally since his accident back in 2009.
Too true, Chuck. And I think I speak for the entire nation when I say how saddened we were on that day in July when Steeven had his fall.
You certainly speak for me, Tom. Worse than the sorrow, however, more bitter than the anguish, were the inevitable questions. There was a mystery surrounding that day. What happened exactly that took Orr out of the game for almost a decade?
Thankfully, Chuck, we can now finally answer those questions.
That's right, Tom. Last week, our very own Ronnie Chump caught up with Orr as he trained for today's event.
It's 10:30 in the morning as I join legendary binger Steeven Orr on a bus stop bench in the middle of the city. The cars zoom past as he sits stoically, straight-backed, the tension showing on his face as his training reaches hour 7. What is it about this bench, Steeven, that helps you prepare for next week's binge?
Well, it's simple, Ronnie. Bus stop benches are known around the world as being some of the most uncomfortable places to sit.
And that discomfort helps you?
It sure does.
How?
Well, the couch I'll be using in next week's binge is quite plump and rather soft. It should contour itself to the shape of my back as I watch almost 10 hours of television. If I can sit here on this hard, unforgiving bench for 10 hours, then the couch should be a piece of cake.
If you could take us through the events that led to your downfall that week in 2009, what happened? What have you learned since? And how will next week differ?
What you have to understand, Ronnie, is that I was trying for a record. I had attempted to watch the first 4 seasons of 24 in just one sitting. That's nearly 3 days worth of television. Iron Fist Season 2 is just 10 episodes. A walk in the park when you compare the two.
So what happened?
I was cocky, too sure of myself. I thought I was invincible. After all, I had successfully binged 2 seasons of Alias without blinking an eye. But 4 seasons of episodes, 24 per season, well, it was impossible. By Season 3 was all I could do to keep my eyes open. But it was 2 episodes into Season 4 when my back seized up on me. The pain, it was just so intense. I couldn't move. And then the true horror happened. I had to use the restroom. But I just couldn't pull myself up off that couch. In the end, I had to call time out, call for the medic. It was humiliating.
But now you're back.
I've had nearly 10 years to figure out who I was, Ronnie, what I wanted. I'm a different person now with different goals.
And you're confident that you can sit through all 10 episodes of Iron Fist Season 2?
I am, Ronnie. I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life.
You heard it here first, folks. Back to the studio.
Bold words for sure, Tom.
They certainly are, Chuck. They certainly are.
And here comes Orr now, striding confidently out onto the field, his 32-ounce mug of Diet Mountain Dew gripped firmly in one hand, the universal remote in the other.
Well, he definitely looks ready to conquer the world, Chuck. Look at him. He hit play on the remote before he even sat down. Now that's confidence.
It certainly is, Tom. And now, as he takes his seat and we hear that all-too-familiar twin percussive blasts that heralds a Netflix original, the crowd goes silent, and the real show begins.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have them. Facts of life, facts of life.
Try to get 'em right when you're learning the facts of life. Learning the facts of life. Learning the facts of life.
It's 800 other kinds.
Okay, so the comic I'm going to talk about today is called Bug, The Adventures of Forager. This was published by Young Animal, which is an imprint of DC Comics. It was a 6-issue mini. It was, the credits on the book are Lee Allred and Mike Allred, storytellers, Laura Allred, colors, and then Nate Picos was the letterer. I like to try to use my own words to describe what the book is about, but I'm only about 2.5 issues into the 6, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what the book is about. So let me read you the description, and then I'll tell you how I feel about it. So, an all-new Young Animal miniseries begins. Forager is just one of the hive before he breaks out of his cocoon and finds himself in a mysterious house in an unknown realm. There, he meets all kinds of strange creatures, a ghostly girl, a talking teddy bear, and other worldly weirdos that have literally jumped out of his worst nightmares. But these interdimensional oddballs are nothing compared to the evil General Electric, who is on the hunt for a reality-bending metal that could alter the fabric of life itself. To stay one step ahead of him and preserve the multiverse, Forager must travel through alternate dimensions to seek the metal and hopefully catch up with that cagey stuffed bear. If he does, will he finally be able to distinguish himself as a new god? Okay, full disclosure, the only reason I started reading this is because of Mike and Laura Allred. Huge fan of Madman from the 90s. So anytime I can read something that Mike Allred has thrown his groove on, I'm going to read. Silver Surfer definitely will be something I'll be talking about in the future. But for now, we're talking about Forager. So written by Mike and Lee Allred. Lee is Mike Allred's brother, apparently. Now, I am not at all really familiar with the New Gods. The whole fourth world thing that Jack Kirby created, don't know a lot about it. Know who Darkseid is. I know who Orion is. New Genesis, Mr. Miracle, only because of Justice League back in the day, back in the Keith Giffen era. But other than that, I don't really know a lot about it. Granny Goodness, she's somebody. Big Barda, Metron, he's the dude that sits in the chair. Yeah, don't know a lot about it. But I started reading this simply because of the man, Mike Allred, and the beautiful colors by his wife, Laura. And I will say, thus far, the book is freaking beautiful. It is a beautiful looking book. But had it not been for Mike Allred, I don't think I would have gone past that first issue because it's freaking weird. He wakes up in a basement in a cocoon. There's a little ghost girl there with a teddy bear that talks to him. These freaking weird monsters are chasing him around. He meets up with some other dude who, I don't know, the dream stream is what this other guy keeps talking about. He polices the dream stream. And so somehow this General Electric guy shows up. I don't know if he's an old school character. I have to assume he is. There's these whistles that are made out of a weird metal that affect dreams or bring you into the dream stream or take you out of the dream stream. But before we know it, Forager is chucked back into World War II, somewhere where there's a lot of snow and ice. The original Blue Beetle is there. There's a couple of other heroes, along with the Losers and the Bazooka Brigade, I think they were called. Anyway, it was really, really confusing and yet still entertaining. I can't explain it because while I wasn't able to follow a lot of it, I kept turning the page or flipping through the panels as it is on my phone because this was a book I got through Hoopla. And again, I'm not done with it. I've left off in the middle of issue 3. Forager is now with the girl and her teddy bear, and they're somewhere in the woods, and Atlas is there, who I find quite disconcerting because he talks like he's an idiot, and he has a hood with no shirt. That always makes me distrust a character. If they don't have a shirt, they're bare-chested, nothing around their torso whatsoever, nothing around their arms or their shoulders and their chest, and yet wears a hood. I find that really weird. It would be like wearing a mask, a full face mask with no shirt on. Creepy. That's all there is to say about it. So I'm going to keep reading it. Maybe I'll report out on it when I finished it, probably by next week. But beautiful book. Mike Allred's the man. And Laura Allred's colors, I like her colors. I think there's also a big problem in this day and age with the way some colors are done. With the way everything is done digitally nowadays, there are obviously more options for a colorist to do many more things. And I think if done correctly, when adding shading and whatnot, I've seen some really amazing colors. And I've also seen where it looks like the colorist is just trying too hard. They've added more than probably what needs to be added. Laura Allred does just what she needs to do. It's not too much. Her colors are really great. They're not overstated. They're very bright and colorful, but she doesn't go over the top. She doesn't try to make every single thing nuanced and shaded and whatnot. But she's really good. I really like her colors. I'm very happy with her colors. And like I said, I've seen a lot of really good colorists out there. Their names are escaping me. Here, I'll give you an example. So I'm one of the other books I'm reading through Hoopla is Preacher. I'm on the 3rd volume. And I didn't notice it right away. So I don't know if there was a change at some point in one of the volumes. But at one point I realized this looks a little different than I remember it looking. And that's when I realized that some of it or all of it has been recolored. And once I noticed, I really had a hard time with it. I don't know why.
Steeven Orr Else will return after these messages. Do you like comic books? What about comic books from the 70s? Well, how about sword and sorcery comic books from the 70s that feature a certain barbarian from Cimmeria who seems to spend most of his time wandering the earth, scoring with babes, and fighting wizards and monsters and such?
If all of that sounds fantastic, then come explore the Hyborian Age and tread the jeweled thrones of Earth with me, Steeven Orr, and the Hither Came Conan podcast. Together we'll look at Conan the Barbarian, the Marvel Comics series that began in 1970, one issue at a time, along with any other Conan comics I can get my hands on. Subscribe to Hither Came Conan now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Enough talk!
Remember, the 5th of November.
The gunpowder treason and plot.
For I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Coming soon to the Magazines and Monsters podcast feed.
A deep dive into one of the best works of Alan Moore's career.
Join me, Billy D., and my co-host Dr. Ange as we explore the incredible series
V for Vendetta.
According to the latest report from FalsifiedStats.com, there are currently 12 million active comic book podcasts clogging up the internet superhighway, and 2.3 million new comic book podcasts are being created every single day. If you're looking for something a little different, then let me tell you about Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. Mike travels the globe and visits comic shops along the way, talking to the owners, or really just whomever happens to be minding the store that day. And it's through these conversations that you'll meet some wonderful people and learn how comic shops are run in places like Murfreesboro, Illinois, and Liverpool, New South Wales, Australia. So check out Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, a truly unique comic book podcast among billions of the same old, same old. Find it now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mike, and I approve this message.
And now back to Steeven Orr Else. There's just so much to do with the new way of coloring that I think some people take it to a level it doesn't need to be taken. And I'm fine with the old way of coloring. If that's the way, I guess if the book was colored a certain way originally, why mess with it? That's my thought. It's like if a band has a really great song that they recorded and put on an album, and they only spent $1,000 to record the album, and so it's really raw, and then 10 years later, they've got all the money in the world, and hey, let's re-record this song because it's one of our classics. Well, we'll re-record it, and we'll use all the tricks that we know now and all the studio tricks, and then it just sounds like crap. Or if somebody covers a great song from back in the day, it never sounds as good because there's something to be said about the way a piece of art was created, when it was created, using what was available at the time. That's what you're used to, whether it's something you listen to, music, or something visual, comic books or a movie. Yeah, I'm talking to you, George Lucas. I like your special editions, but was it necessary? I don't think so. So you visually, or if you're listening, you get used to the way it is, and then somebody comes along and tries to make it better. And maybe for the person who's never seen it before or who's never heard it before, for them, it's fine. It looks great. It sounds great. But for those of us who have been viewing it or listening to it a certain way for 20 years, don't mess with success. That's all I'm saying. So that's my comics. Something new every day. For example, I had no idea that the first Conan story, written by Robert E. Howard, featured Conan as a king. No idea at all. Not until recently. See, I've always been a fair-weather Conan fan. My first exposure to the character was the 1984 Arnold Schwarzenegger film, Conan the Destroyer. This was the second of the two Conan movies. The first, Conan the Barbarian, came out in 1982, and it was rated R, and since I was 10 at the time, I was not able to see it. But of course, Conan the Destroyer was rated PG and it played all the time on TBS back then. And of course, there were the Marvel comics as well. I didn't read many of the comics, not back then. They'd been publishing the comics since 1970. And as they were coming out, right there at the beginning in 1970, I wasn't even born. But by the time I was watching Conan the Destroyer, I wasn't old enough to go out and pick up my own books. But I'd see him now and again, and I had always been rather intrigued by them. But up until recently, that was my history with Conan. Sure, in 2003, when Dark Horse picked up the property and started making comics, I gave him a try. And then, of course, there was also the Jason Momoa reboot in 2011, the movie, which I watched and I do remember enjoying. I should probably go back and give it a try. But in all that time, I had never read any of the original Robert E. Howard stories. The point I'm trying to make is that what little I had known about Conan from what I'd watched and read was that at some point he would become king. That's made pretty clear in the movies. There was even a King Conan comic from Marvel sometime back in the 80s. But here's the thing. The movies and the comics I read all featured Conan before he became a king. I knew that at some point he would come to rule. I had just always assumed, apart from the King Conan comic, that the main crux of the Conan mythology was all about the road to becoming king. But not that long ago, I decided I wanted to know more about the character, and I figured it might be best to start at the beginning. But being the low-rent fanboy that I am, I started with the library. They, unfortunately, had nothing. No paperbacks, no hardbacks, and no ebooks. So I stepped up to the next level and I checked out Amazon. I found a few collections that contained all of Robert E. Howard's Conan work, but even the ebook was way outside my price range. But then one day, the good folks at Amazon sent me an email. And by good folks, I do, of course, mean the robots. So basically, based on my recent Conan searches, they wanted to point me in the direction of an ebook called Conan the Barbarian Collected Adventures. And it was just 99 cents. It's still there for that price. At least it is now as I'm recording this. I don't know if it still will be by the time you hear this. Anyway, I couldn't turn that down. I bought it and I started reading immediately. It opened with a story called The Tower of the Elephant, in which Conan is a thief and he's breaking into this tower to steal a gem. It goes from there to Rogues in the House, which has been my favorite story so far. After that was Shadows in the Moonlight. And that's about as far as I got until I come across this website for Blackgate Magazine. They had recently started a series of articles on the website called Hither Came Conan, where different writers talked about each of Robert E. Howard's Conan stories. Looking through what they had at the time, my first thought was how stupid it was that they weren't doing the stories in order, or at least what I thought was the order in which they were published. I mean, their first article was for a story called The Phoenix on the Sword. And I was like, what? No, the first story is The Tower of the Elephant. Why are you guys doing this? Why are you making this difficult for me? But then as I was reading through the article, I stumbled upon what I consider an amazing discovery. Robert E. Howard didn't write the Conan stories chronologically, and I don't recall where I read it or who said it, but I found something at one point as I was looking that compared the writing and the publication of these stories told out of order when looking at Conan's life, as if the old warrior himself were telling the stories around the campfire. Because when you're just hanging out with your bros and you're telling them stories about the amazing things that you did in your life, you don't always go in order. You just don't. And that's kind of the idea here. And so at that point, I decided I would just go ahead and read the rest of the stories in the order in which they were published. And so I had to look through the book to find The Phoenix on the Sword, which, as I said, was the first. And I was almost blown over. I was almost knocked straight onto my keister to discover that it was about Conan the King. The first ever Conan tale he wrote, and he was already a king. Well, stick a fork in me. I'm done. The more research I did, I found out that the story was originally called By This Axe I Rule. And it was actually a tale originally. It was a tale that he wrote featuring another one of his characters, Cull of Atlantis, but he couldn't get it sold. So he reworked it and blammo, history was made. And then to leave you with just a little bit more information, Roy Thomas adapted Phoenix on the Sword for Conan the Barbarian Annual #2 for Marvel Comics in June of 1976. Dark Horse did a 4-part adaptation of the Phoenix on the Sword as part of the King Conan line. I have read neither one.
Why are you creating a monster? And they call me Frankenstein. And they call me Frankenstein. Yeah, I'm Frankenstein. I'm Frankenstein.
I had a Honda Civic once that just would not hold a muffler. Every time I put a new muffler on it, 3 weeks later, it would fall off. And after the third one falling off, I just said, you know what, to heck with it. A neighbor of mine worked at a mechanic in an auto shop, and he welded the new one on, and it fell off again anyway. I don't know what it was about that car. So after the third one fell off, or actually it was the second one, but it was the second time it had been put on. After it fell off, I just said, you know what, my car is just not meant to have a muffler. So it was loud. And this was probably back in the Just Another Fanboy days, because I was delivering pizza at the time as a second job. And one of the kids that worked there, one of the high school kids, made mention of my car being fast. And I just laughed. I thought that was so funny because it was like a 4-speed or something. I mean, it lost power going uphill. It took, an act of God to get that car to go uphill. And so it turns out that he just assumed, because of the sound of the vehicle without the muffler and the fact that I guess it was a Honda Civic, he just assumed I had converted it into a road racer. Like I was some Fast and the Furious guy out there with my big belly and my beard racing people. That's why I had to, that's why I was delivering pizzas, because I made so much money in the road race game that, I had to make it look like it was coming from somewhere. All that money coming from tips. So, okay, that was a little off topic.
I want to thank you for listening to Steeven Orr Else. This episode was written, performed, produced, engineered, and edited by me, Steeven Orr. Questions and comments can be directed to SteevenOrElse@gmail.com, or you can find me online at all the regular places by searching for @Steeven Orr Else. If you enjoyed the show, you can help to boost our presence online by leaving a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. I also invite you to join our subscription program, Steeven Orr Else Beyond. And in return, you'll get episodes of Steeven Orr Else along with every other show under the Steeven Orr Else media umbrella, early and ad-free. Check out the link in the show notes or just go to SteevenOrElse.com to join today. The Steeven Orr Else podcast is a presentation of Steeven Orr Else Media. For more nerdy content created by me, check out SoManyPodcasts.com. All links will be in the show notes.
I just don't think I can move through life knowing that a guy named Steeven did this to me.
How could you let this happen, Steeven?
Steeven! Thank God. I had a horrible feeling I was going to be the only one here.
Bigfoot stole my wife.
Bigfoot has a name.
I call him Steeven now.